أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I want to speak with what my friends and anyone who cares to listen about a couple of things in Islam, about the Muslim Ummah, most especially in Nigeria and in northern Nigeria more specifically. 2 days ago, I was invited by some friends in a mosque here in Abuja to come and give a talk about how to restructure the Ummah in terms of capacity building and all of those things. And I spoke to them for about an hour, and I would like to summarize what I have said in that place. The reason I think it's very important for us Muslims, most especially in Africa, in Nigeria, northern Nigeria to be more precise, to be talking about the restructuring of Ummah is because, quite honestly, we are lagging behind in so many areas. Look at politics. We might seem to be at the helms of the affairs, but at the same time, look at our region is the most backward and the most underdeveloped. Look at education. Our states are educationally less developed states according to the classifications of JAM. Look at finances. Our banking industry is being handled by people other than us. And is that actually right? Is it correct for us Muslims to just sit back and look at things happening simply because we think that hereafter is better than this life, which is quite true, yes, it is. But does that justify us just sitting back and see things happen and we didn't do anything about it? No, that is not correct. That is absolutely not correct. So the reason we need to be talking about capacity building, the restructuring of the Ummah and capacity building and empowerment is because we want to reverse the current situation. We are supposed to actually disrupt this status quo that is going on today, right? So in that mosque, I have started by giving a kind of a teaser. I asked this question: how much money do you think it's available in the whole world? How much money is there? Stock in banks, checking accounts, savings, and current and domestic, all the accounts, how much money. Statistics is putting that at about $36 trillion. And if you put shares and stocks and all of that together, with all the money available in the world, is about $90 trillion. How many Muslims do we have in the world? About 2 billion Muslims. How much money is in our hand? Because actually money is one of the criteria of power today. How much money is in our hand and how much money is supposed to be in our hand today in the world? How many Muslims are in the list of the richest people in the world? Right? So when we begin to look at things from this perspective, we will realize that actually things are much worse than we think they are. For example, as a typical Nigerian, you may be thinking that Nigeria is a rich country, and that has been a fallacy that has been there for a very long time. Nigeria is not as rich as we think it is. We might have a lot of wealth that we have not yet, we might have a lot of resources that we have not been able to transform into wealth yet. Look at our GDP, for example, about 5,000, that's per capita, about 5,800 thereabout, depending on the year you're looking at. If you compare it with our neighboring countries, the Niger Republic, Benin Republic, Chad Republic, Cameroon, all of which, if you put everything together, they have less than 5,000. Some of them having as low as 800, some of them having highest with about 2,500. You would think we are rich because we are double the immediate second. But that is if you look at this region. If you look at the global average, for example, which ranges between $40,000 to $50,000, that is when you realize that we are actually poor. And if you compare that with the richest countries in the world, countries that have between 100 and 123,000 GDP per capita, that is when you realize that we are really, really poor. What is 5,000 in comparison with 120 something thousand? That's like nothing, right? So these are some of the reasons why the reason I've given example with Nigeria is because Nigeria is a Muslim country, most especially the northern part of Nigeria and even the country as a whole. Muslims have the largest population. So, quite honestly, we are very, very poor, and that is the situation in most of the Muslim countries, and except for a few, and that is not right. That is absolutely not right. It's not supposed to be so. Muslims have to be rich, and they have to be really very, very rich. And the reason Muslims need to be rich is because when Muslims are rich, they will lead. And when Muslims lead, the world is definitely going to be a better place. When Muslims, I'm not, by the way, I'm not talking about some Muslims today that exhibit very bad behavior and bad model, but and quite honestly, there are no shortages of those. I'm talking about real Islam, those people who really understand that Islam is all about balancing between spirituality and worldly life. That's what I'm talking about. So, if Muslims are rich, they are going to be leading. And if Muslims are leading, then the world is going to be a better place for everyone. Bigger countries and stronger countries will not be cheating and will not be exploiting the weaker countries. They would not be making them unnecessarily dependent on them. They would not be exploiting their economy. They would not be exploiting them intellectually and all of that. Right? This is the reason Muslims need to be really, really rich. And after seeing this, I spoke to my audience that day about how to restructure the Ummah. And I see quite a lot of efforts by many Muslims. Some are very busy trying to go around from one mosque to another, admonishing people and talking to them about spirituality. And you see some of them establishing mosques, building mosques, some of them building schools, some of them trying to help the needy and all of that. And all of these things are really quite significant. But the problem with this is that they are individualistic efforts. And for us to actually stand up and live up to the design of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that says كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. For us to be able to live up to that, quite honestly, we need to act as a team. We can't afford to continue acting as individuals. Forget about the fact that you are Izala or Ahl Sunnah, as you might call yourself, or you are Sufi or Shiite, or you are Naqshbandi, Tariqa or Qadri or Tijani, or forget about all those things. We are talking about the Ummah now. That is what we are talking about, and quite honestly, I think that is what should concern us this time around, right? So, as Ummah, we need to wake up and we need to start acting as one. And we can't, quite honestly, all the arguments happening between Muslims, this group, that. I look at that and I see two things. One, luxury. Two, childishness. It is either as a result of the luxury of lacking of any challenge, which makes us so complacent and so laid back, that resulted into all this internal conflicts and arguments. And the second thing is like I said, childishness. Quite honestly, we are not mature enough to understand the enormity of the challenge that is facing us as Ummah. Come to think of it, you are Muslim today because some years back some people put a lot of effort. They sacrificed. Some sacrificed their lives. Some sacrificed their comfort. Some sacrificed so many things, right? The Sahaba did the sacrifice. The Tabi'un did the sacrifice. The Tabi'in did sacrifice. Generations of sacrifice resulted into us becoming Muslims today. And for the future generation to get this legacy, we have to sacrifice too. And we have to really wake up and understand the enormity of the challenge facing the Muslim Ummah today. So we have to, first of all, like I said, begin to act as a group. And acting as a group, doesn't just mean coming together and placing one another. No, we have to do the real diagnosis of what is the problem, and that means we have to do need assessment. What do we really need, right? We have to do a lot of research, right? It's not enough for you to know how to pray. You read all the Arabic texts, you read all the Islamic literature, and you understand very well how to pray, what is the hukum in this mazhab and that mazhab, what are the ikhtilaf of ulama, and in prayer, in giving zakah, in hajj, in all the acts of ibadah, and you know everything about that. That is quite significant, but it's not enough. It's quite significant, but it's not enough. We have to understand in the modern day how to conduct research and realize what are our problems, real diagnosis beyond the lip service that we get from many Islamic scholars. I'm sorry to say that. And after that, then we have to try to bring all the stakeholders together in a community like, let's say, either Abuja Muslim community or Kano or Jigawa, anywhere that there are Muslims. You can't afford to just sit at the comfort of your house, you and your disciples and your followers and your students, and think that you can change anything. Gone are the days when you think you can do it a one-man show. You can't do that. It's no longer about you or your disciples. You have to bring all the stakeholders together. As long as you're serious, you would definitely get some serious listening ears that will listen to you, whether they are traditional leaders, whether they are Islamic scholars like you, whether they are some businessmen, as long as they do ashhadu an la ilaha illallah and Muhammad Rasulullah, they pray, they do all of that. That means they are concerned only that probably they didn't get anyone who is serious enough to bring them together so that they'll come and do the job. So bringing the stakeholders together, and after bringing the stakeholders together and telling them that, okay, these are the diagnoses that we have done, we realize that these are the problems. What we are looking for right now is not, we are not bringing you to give us money or to give us support, because that is the mistake that I think many people who wanted to work for Islam fall into. The moment they meet any rich person, bring money, we'll build the mosque. That is a grievous mistake, because that has become synonymous with begging. You are not begging anyone to give you any favor. You are not doing that, quite honestly. What you are doing is you are bringing someone to come and work together to help a cause that all of you believe in. That is what you're doing, right? And if that is what you're doing, quite honestly, that you are not telling the person, come here, bring money. No, that is not the issue. The issue is, tell him that we have done the diagnosis and we realize that this is the problem and we want to solve it. And I don't know what is the solution. You don't know what is the solution. But I know the problem and you know the problem. Now, what do we need to do? What we need to do is to do research and find out what the solution would be, right? So don't come here assuming that you have all the solutions simply because you speak Arabic. That is not true. That is quite not true, right? You don't have the solutions. You know the problems, yes. Many people understand the problems in their own way too, yes. But what is the solution? We need to involve expert. We need to involve expert. That is what I'm talking about when I say bringing all the stakeholders together. Then after bringing the stakeholders, let me say this in clear and unmistakable terms. What you are looking for at the stage of bringing the stakeholders is buy-in, for them to agree to want to work with you, for them to agree to want to help solve the problem that you have diagnosed. This is the only thing you're looking for at that stage. Then after that, you would now go back to the drawing board, trying to assess the capacity that we have as a community. What is the capacity that we have? right? And then when we are talking about capacity, we are not just talking about money. We are talking about our expert who can contribute with their expertise. We are talking about people who have money who can contribute their money. We're talking about people that have influence who can contribute their influence for things to get done. We are talking about the people that have the skills who can contribute to their skills. We are talking about people who do not necessarily have any of those, but they can speak and convince people to do things, not necessarily through influence, but through the power of conviction. They can convince people to do things. These are the capacity that we have already available to us. After putting all these things together and talking to all the people that have these resources available to them and getting their buy-in, they agree to contribute, then try to find out what is the gap. What is that capacity that we need and it's not part of the capacity that we have already, and how are we willing to fill in the gap? And that is the real job there, right? So you do that, and after doing that, then we now focus on the implementation. At the implementation level, probably at the diagnosis level, when we did the need assessment, we realized that we need leaders, and that's opinion leaders, for example. We need skillful people, we need professionals, we need all of that. And then that is when we need to start establishing schools that would give us what we need. You remember in the beginning I said many people are making individualistic effort establishing schools and mosques and all of that. And I said that was quite significant and good, but not enough. This is the reason I'm saying it is not enough, because it wasn't based on any need assessment and diagnosis that realizes that we actually have that problem. I give you an example. If you look around today, Muslims in northern Nigeria, you realize that we have too many Islamic scholars. There's reason for that. At some point, we realized that what we needed was Islamic scholarship, and we started opening Islamic schools and opening and sending people to Medina, to Egypt, to Sudan, all of those countries to go and learn Arabic, learn Islam, and come back. And they did that, and they did quite well. But the problem with that is that we have too many of them right now. And because we have too many, and when a person becomes an Islamic scholar, he is automatically a leader. And a leader needs followers. What if all the followers are taken already? Then he'll be competing with his peers to take some of their followers. And that's a problem. That is not what we need. And when you're looking for someone to do plumbing work in a mosque, for example, you would have to bring someone who is not a Muslim. We don't have skillful people. We don't have professionals. And we are busy producing too many leaders that don't have followers to follow them. Right? That's a problem. And that is because we didn't do that based on any scientific evidence of the need that we have in that respect. Right? That is the reason we have that problem. So now we come to the implementation. At the implementation level, we implement what we realize is the actual problem, and then we go to evaluation to evaluate what we got right, what we got wrong, and what is the impact of what we're doing, whether it is giving the result that we anticipated, whether it is short of the result, whether sometimes we can even overachieve. And then after all this evaluation, then we would know what we should be doing more and what we should stop, right, based on the result. These are some of the things that I think I should bring to knowledge of my brothers and sisters, Nigerian Muslims. And thank you very much for listening. And inshallah, we'll keep meeting and discussing our problems, probably every day, probably every week, as time and permits, and as Allah permits, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.